Hello, I'm Laura McHarrie at The Hidden Edge with another tea break tip on how to use business models and tools to help you manage your growing business. Today, we're looking at scope creep, the nightmare monster for all project managers, whether they are freelance or corporate contractors. We often hear on the news the stories of big projects going over budget at the expense of taxpayers. But for small businesses like ours, it's us that tends to suffer the financial consequences. So what can we do? Well, let's start by having the triple constraints model. The triple constraints model has been one of the main staples for teaching project management. This model is represented by a triangle with scope on the horizontal leg, time on the left-hand leg, cost, resources, and price on the right-hand leg, which leaves quality slap bang in the center of the triangle. The principle is to do with the priorities of a project. The customer must decide in what regards to a particular deliverable, the three constraints of scope, time, and cost is most flexible, of medium flexibility, and least flexible of all. Let's imagine that a customer who decides for a particular deliverable, time is the most flexible, scope is the medium flexibility, and the cost is the least flexible item of all. This would mean that, if need be, they would prefer to be that the deliverable was later than originally planned, as opposed to the deliverable costing more or having fewer features. The rule is that if one of the triple constraints is changed, it will most likely affect one or both of the other constraints, in addition to affecting the quality of the deliverables. An effective way to demonstrate this concept is to say to the stakeholder, and I love this little anecdote, I have 3 cards, better, faster, and cheaper. You can only have 2 cards. Which of the 2 cards would you like? So if scope creep is the process by which a project grows beyond its originally anticipated size, what can we do about it? Well, we have a scoping checklist. It's important that we are in control of the business. So scope creep should really be negligible or a non-existent factor for us. So if you follow the process through these 5 key checklists, we should be in a position that actually the backlash that you will get is from poor quality clients only. And in reality, you don't really want to work with poor quality clients. Meanwhile, good clients, those that you do want to work with, will benefit from this focused and professional approach to project management and delivery. First of all, we need to understand the client's benefit. What do they get out of what it is that we are delivering? They ask you to build a website. Actually, what the client really wants is to increase their online sales by, say, 30% by creating a more user-friendly website design. If you understand the outcome of what you are delivering, then you should have a relatively clear idea of what you will need to do in order to fulfill the client's desires before even getting into detail. Point number 2, critique the client's ideas. There are 2 types of service provision, generally speaking, passive and dynamic. The passive service provision is where the client tells you, the service provider, what they expect from you. The dynamic service provider works with the client to establish what it is that they need in order to achieve their goals. The thing is, you understand what it is that you can deliver, and if you can understand what your client desires, then you can marry up the 2. It allows you to be a dynamic provider. If you allow the client to tell you what they think they want from you, then you're more likely to meet scope creep at some point in the future, when it becomes clear that their original scope of work doesn't fit the bill in terms of meeting what they really do want, their desired outcomes. And then you need to collaborate with the client to produce a plan of action in order to correct the scope of work. This is the nuts and bolts of scope creep. More often than not, it's about scoping out the project of work, and when it's poorly defined, that creep comes in. For the most parts, clients aren't really concerned about what is in your agreement. They're concerned about their business. If they think that you are liable to carry out the work that they ask you to do, and if they feel that something needs to be done in order for their outcomes to be met, they may well request it for you, in all innocence of what was in the scope anyway. That's why a clearly defined scope of works that is understood and agreed by both parties is really important. Not only should you ensure that the works be carried out are clearly and unambiguously worded in your agreement, you must also make sure that the client has read and understood the scope. Which brings us really nicely on to pricing it right, with an element of contingency. Ultimately, scope creep comes down to an issue of price. If the resources expended on carrying out a project exceed the desired amount, then you have failed to manage your business correctly. To avoid scope creep, you must not only define the works, but you must also have a crystal clear understanding of your material involvement in the project. Obviously, your pricing method will vary upon the nature of your business and the way in which you choose to approach the work. But the key is breaking down the project into their contingent parts and ensuring that everything is accounted for. Then you can assign the necessary resources to each of the portions of the work and come out with a conservative costing. I would also advise that you do put that contingency into place, maybe 10–15%. This isn't to allow for scope creep, but more of an insurance policy to account for any potential discrepancies in your estimate. If you wish and you feel that it's appropriate, you could always give back that contingency if you don't use it. That's an interesting one to put into your T's and C's. And finally, talking of T's and C's, terms and conditions, of course, get it in writing. A clear scope of works and a priced proposal is really important so that the client can read it, understand it, and sign off on all necessary documentation. I advise that your contract clearly states any additional work not stated in the scope of the works is considered as extra and must be agreed by the client and the provider in writing. This will discourage add-on work. You could even add a predetermined premium rate for additional works. The key is making sure that you've covered all the aspects of the scope of the project. Then when the customer asks for an additional piece of work, you know that it can be applied with an additional price in order to get that done. And lastly, do remember that it isn't just about getting the project agreed, it's about getting their understanding. So have a go. Download the templates from the Hidden Edge website. Use the checklist to ensure that the next time you're putting a pricing bid together for a project, that you get all of it covered off properly. And so until next time, enjoy this tea break.